Welcome back. All right, some more news of the day for all you fine people on the internet for your Friday, March the 14th, meaning tomorrow, the Ides of March. And we will be previewing the Ides of March edition of the NHL schedule. If you follow Shakespeare, the Ides of March, it's fine. It's fine. So we'll start at the top of the board. We got a couple of injuries to discuss. First off, Michael Backlund's going to be out for Calgary week to week. That usually means a minimum of 2 weeks. Without Backlund, that hurts Calgary. It absolutely does. It's gonna test their strength and their depth, and it's a rough time because we know that Utah, St. Louis, Vancouver are all right there vying for that same playoff spot currently occupied by the Calgary Flames. So we'll see how things go without Backlund. The Jets are going to be tested without Pionk. Pionk's a pending UFA, I do believe, this summer as well. Pionk's had a really strong year. One thing is, of course, the Jets did add Luke Shen at the deadline as some depth on the blue line, and that's why you do that. You add that depth because you know there's going to be injuries. So it does mean that I would think Stanley goes back in the lineup tonight against Dallas, but Dallas is going to be a tough opponent, and I guarantee you the Stars are probably quite glad that Pionk's not going to be in the lineup for Winnipeg, and they get a chance to maybe pull within 6 points of the Winnipeg Jets. Because otherwise, if the Jets win in regulation, then the division's theirs. If Dallas wins in regulation, the Jets may still win the division, but it might be a little more difficult for them. So we'll see what happens there. Good news-ish with the Canucks. It feels like we've done this before. I kind of feel like I could just load up a news video from 3 months ago and just play a little clip from that. Demko's at practice today. He did leave early. That was expected of him. He is not close to a return, but he's progressing. So if this sounds like something I said a few months ago, you'd be right. With Demko, of course, he wants to come back. He wants to play. He would be a huge boost to the Canucks if he could come back and play. I think the expectation now from fans, probably from management, is just plan as if he's not going to come back and play. And if he comes back in and plays for you, that's a bonus. Myers and D. Petey, or Elias Pettersson, were both at practice today too, which means that you avoid a worst-case scenario with Pettersson. D. Petey's been a really good story for the Vancouver Canucks this year, a team that hasn't had a lot of really good stories. Pettersson, and I would say Garland too, have been really good positive stories for the Vancouver Canucks. So not having Myers and Pettersson out for very long would be great news for the Vancouver Canucks, and so we'll see how many of them end up playing or who ends up playing tomorrow when Vancouver's at home against Chicago. The fact that they're at home against Chicago means if they want to give somebody the night off, they might be able to. They would definitely not view Chicago as like a major opponent coming in, although every point's really important, so all hands on deck is important in that case too. Josh Norris is dealing with a nagging injury from the sounds of things. Lindy Ruff saying he's been dealing with. With the amount of injuries, the amount of time missed by Josh Norris, I'd be surprised if he plays pain-free, to be completely clear on that. And Lindy Ruff says he's preparing for the fact that Norris may not play tomorrow. They have a matinee game tomorrow where they're hosting Vegas, and it looks like they'll be without Josh Norris for that game. So they would have known this when they traded for Josh Norris. We all know his injury history. Buffalo would be no different. And so hopefully Norris can play, or at the very least he doesn't miss very much time. Josh Norris is a really effective top six forward when healthy. It is the when healthy that you kind of have to put in quotes when talking about Norris. Interesting little tidbit from yesterday's games. New York Rangers. I'm wearing a Rangers jersey for this and all. Matt Rempe was given a penalty last night that he shouldn't have been, and it was obvious right away. In fact, I was talking to Yvonne in here when that penalty was called, and she's like, the guy just ran into him. Why is that a penalty? And I'm like, Matt Rempe. Matt Rempe gets calls against him because of reputation and also because of his size. And I've talked about that in the last couple of weeks. There was one elbowing incident on, I believe on, who was it on Nashville? I want to say Blankenberg. I think it was on Blankenberg. But Blankenberg's a full foot shorter than Rempe. And coming from a short person, you got to be aware of where the elbows of the tall guys are at all times. So Rempe's going to have issues getting the benefit of the doubt from officials. But at the very least, the official went over and apologized to him after for making that call and realized it was the wrong call when he saw the replay. And Rempe told him, hey, everybody makes mistakes. So I do like that the referee owned up to it and said, yeah, that was the wrong call, and I apologize. That he went over and told the player that as well. I think that's great. And yeah, Matt Rempe is going to have to deal with calls based on reputation and based on him being a lot bigger than a lot of the other guys he's out there hitting. So he's just going to have to, he has to have that balance of being more careful without making himself ineffective as that bottom six forward that the New York Rangers want him to be. So, yeah, Rempe's just learning how to play in the NHL. It happens. And, yeah, in last night's case, that penalty shouldn't have been called. And remember, my wife cheers for Minnesota, and she was still like, that shouldn't have been called. But it was. So, all right, let me know your thoughts on that in the comment section below. Now let's get into tomorrow's games. So before tonight's games get started, I do need to do a preview of Saturday's games. Vegas is playing tomorrow morning. It's 12:30 p.m. Eastern, so 9:30 a.m. Pacific. Thank you, Gary Bettman. Vegas 39-19-7. I might as well blame Gary, sure. But Vegas 39-19-7. They're 7-2-1 in their last 10. Pretty comfortably in first place in their division now. Buffalo 25-33-6. They're 3-6-1 in their last 10. Coming off of a pretty rough loss against Detroit as well. So for Buffalo, be interesting to see how tomorrow goes for them. There's no pressure really on either team. This game is going to be one of two things. Either high scoring, a lot of fun, a lot of events, or just two teams skating around for 2.5 hours and trying not to get anybody hurt because the game doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot. We'll see what happens. 3 Eastern, noon Pacific, the New Jersey Devils in Pittsburgh against the Penguins. New Jersey, 36-25-6 on the season, 5-5 in their last 10. Pittsburgh, 27-31-10 overall. And they're 4-5-1 in their last 10, and they seem to enjoy playing the role of spoiler. Jari seems to be a lot better since his stint in the American Hockey League, so this could be a bit of a trap game for New Jersey, but I'm not putting a trap magnet there because if you're up against the Penguins and you're the Devils, you shouldn't have a problem getting up for that game. You just shouldn't. Doesn't matter where they are in the standings. You should, as a New Jersey Devil, be able to go out there, play against Pittsburgh, and have a little bit of edge to your game. And then at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific. That's not right. That's 2 o'clock Pacific, 5 o'clock Eastern. I'll go ahead and fix this. The Washington Capitals in San Jose against the San Jose Sharks. The Washington Capitals 43-15-8 on the season. They're 6-4 in their last 10 games. The San Jose Sharks 18-40-9. They're 3-5-2 in their last 10 games. Washington, of course, coming off the game where they were shut out by the LA Kings. San Jose coming off of a win against Chicago, but I would expect San Jose to lose this one against Washington. But the one thing with Washington right now is, and I want to put this in there as keep an eye on this. There's no pressure on Washington right now in terms of teams beneath them. And that President's Trophy, I don't think there's a team that's really interested in winning it. So would I be surprised if Washington's record or from here on till the end of the season isn't great? Not really. I think it's more difficult to have that same intensity every night when your position in the standings isn't threatened in any way. So this could be an interesting game for that reason. Maybe San Jose can pull off a huge upset there. And then at 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific, we have 5 games starting at that time, beginning with Tampa Bay in Boston against the Bruins. Tampa Bay had better bring a better game than what they brought last weekend because Boston shut them out. Tampa Bay 37-23-5 overall. They're 6-3-1 in their last 10. A little bit of frustration with Tampa Bay in some recent games. Boston 30-29-8 overall. They're 3-5-2 in their last 10, and they're going through the motions of a team that's not likely to make the playoffs. But if they do get the win over Tampa, they can at least hurt Tampa Bay's chances of catching second place in the division. So you got to find a reason to go out there and play well. Even if it's just, hey, you want to have a job next year? Go out there and play well now. Then we have the Battle of Alberta. Yes, the Battle of Alberta. Toronto and at home against Ottawa. Anyways. Battle of Ontario. Battle of Alberta, not on the board. Battle of Ontario. 35-25-5 is the record for the Ottawa Senators, who are 6-3-1 in their last 10 games. Toronto 39-23-3 overall. They're 6-3-1 in their last 10 games. This should be a fun one. Both teams are playing pretty darn well, and both teams, looking to really solidify their spot in the playoffs, and Toronto looking to chase down first, if that's still a possibility, plus hold off Tampa Bay, while Ottawa wants to make sure they make the playoffs. So this should be an intense one. 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific start. The Florida Panthers in Montreal against the Habs. These games tend to be kind of wild between these two franchises. Florida, 41-22-3 overall. They're 8-2 in their last 10 games. For Montreal, 31-27-7. They're 6-2-2 in their last 10 games. They're not out of this at all. This is definitely going to be an interesting time, because if they can get a win over Florida, they have Ottawa next week. They can drag one of the teams they're trying to catch down towards them. So Yeah, Montreal is still in this, and for Florida, they're looking to maintain their lead over Toronto and not have to worry about Toronto getting any closer, and they have control over that with that game against Montreal tomorrow. 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific start as well between Carolina and Philadelphia. Carolina 39-22-4 on the season, 7-3 in their last 10 games. Philadelphia 28-31-8 overall, and they are 4-5-1 in their last 10 games. Another team that you have to worry about playing spoiler here. For Carolina, they'll be keeping an eye on what New Jersey does. And I mean, technically, if Washington loses and Carolina wins, Carolina gets closer to Washington, but I can't sell it as if it's a race. I can't. There just isn't one. And then 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific start as well between the Rangers and Columbus. This is a huge game for both teams. This is some good scheduling, honestly. These games tomorrow, a lot of them have some consequence to them. The Rangers 32-28-6 overall. They're 5-3-2 in their last 10. Columbus has fallen on some hard times. 31-26-8 overall. They're 5-5 in their last 10 games. So they have to get it together. The Rangers looking to get themselves above the playoff line and stay there. And a win over Columbus would go a long way towards starting that storyline for them. A team we did not envision would be in this position when the season started. Even a month into the season, there was no talk about, well, I don't know if the Rangers are going to make it. You would have been considered crazy. Then at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, St. Louis and Minnesota in the Battle of Alberta. No, I'm just kidding. They're all 11 of them, Battle of Alberta. Damnedest thing. Everything's Alberta. St. Louis 31-28-7. There's a phrase that's never been uttered in human history. St. Louis 31-28-7 is their record. I had a good night's sleep. Why are you asking? St. Louis 6-2-2 in their last 10 games. Minnesota 37-24-5 overall, 4-5-1 in their last 10 games. And anytime St. Louis and Minnesota play against each other, it's a division rivalry. Should be a lot of fun. Minnesota wants to turn around things and make sure they don't have to worry about falling below the playoff line, while St. Louis wants to get above the playoff line, and a regulation win over Minnesota would make things a little bit more interesting in the West. Also at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, Nashville in Los Angeles to play against the Kings. Kings coming off that big shutout victory over Washington last night. Nashville 25-32-7 overall. They're 6-4 over their last 10 games. The LA Kings 35-20-9 overall. 5-3-2 in their last 10. Nashville, of course, is playing tonight in Anaheim, so this is the second half of back-to-back. That should favor LA. It should, but things can be unpredictable when it comes to the Nashville Predators. Would I be surprised if Nashville loses to Anaheim and then goes into LA and beat them? No, because Nashville doesn't make any sense. 10 Eastern, 7, but all Alberta teams are like that. 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific start. Chicago in Vancouver against the Vancouver Canucks. Chicago 20-37-9 on the season, 3-5-2 in their last 10. And fun to watch. I always say that, it's true. Vancouver 30-24-11. They're 4-6 in their last 10 games, but they're still in the hunt for a playoff spot in the West. And if they can start stringing some wins together, they can make a better case for themselves as finishing above the playoff line. And who knows, maybe Vancouver and Calgary both make it. Maybe Minnesota ends up being the team that falls out. We shall see. I know that sounds crazy, but we've seen some crazy this year, so why not speculate on more crazy? Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Your support is always greatly appreciated as we head into another weekend of just hockey wall-to-wall. But tomorrow it's 11 games, so I'll be able to do a review of probably the first 3 games at some point during the night, and then a review of the other 8 on their own. And then, of course, the power rankings go live early Sunday morning. So thank you guys for your support as always. I will talk to you again soon.